Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick, and we're here to talk about the defense from that Jaguars game on Sunday night. Here joining me to do it is Gianna Hahn of the Baltimore Banner. Gianna, how you doing?
Doing well. I'm still in Jacksonville. It's a lot more sunny today, a lot sunnier. Wish it would have been like this yesterday for sure.
It was windy for game time?
It was quite windy. It's a little bit windy still, but apparently this is the first sun they've seen in a few weeks.
Really? Okay. I didn't realize it was that bad in North Florida this time of year, but definitely seemed to have an effect on field goal kicking in that first half.
Oh, for sure. That was a little bit surprising.
Yeah. All right. Now, Gianna, you work at the Baltimore Banner right now, and your previous job was with the Flyers, I know. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was quite the adventure of a job. I actually was with the Ravens as an intern at the Baltimore Sun to start my job, and then moved to Alabama to cover Auburn, and couldn't have gotten further from SEC football than covering the NHL. Didn't know much about it. I'm from Howard County, so not the biggest hockey area. So I just got thrown right in, had to learn a lot. It was definitely an on the go type of experience, but I had to just, I was the only reporter at some games because me and my beat partner were the only ones that traveled. So it was very, very fun. I miss it, but I'm also very happy to be back in football.
All right. There was a young lady who was doing the Caps games a few years ago. It was a very good reporter in terms of her understanding of the game and whatnot. Do you know what her name is? I think she's Iranian background.
I don't know Iranian. I know Samantha Pell was the second to last one.
Okay.
And then I do know there was a girl before her that I heard a little bit about, but I was only in hockey for 2 years, so can't go super deep into the history.
All right. Very good. Anyway, I'm sure we'll draw on those experiences as we get through this. Jaguars certainly gave the Ravens a few gifts in a long night of football, some drop passes, missed field goals, some stupid decisions near the goal line at the end of the first half. Kind of give me your impression of that.
It felt like the Ravens were playing down again, which they've done throughout the season, but then you stop and step back and you're like, wait, the Jaguars are actually a very good team. So the Ravens must have been doing something to earn those gifts. As much as you'd like say, oh, they missed the field goal. It was a field goal from 50 plus, and they held them to that distance. So they definitely got gifts. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I feel like, at least if we're going to talk about the hockey experience, there's a term that if you do the right things, the good things will come to you. And I feel like, I don't know if that's a saying that's often said in football, but it does feel like that. It feels like Ravens are doing things they should, and it's coming back to them.
There you go. Luck is the residue of design. I think we've heard that in other things. Tough game for Lawrence. I thought that he kind of played into the Ravens' hands a little bit, and we'll get into some of this later in terms of really played a lot of small ball in the game, and I thought that really benefited the Ravens, frankly, in terms of having to get the ball out quick. I think it's benefited them all season in terms of being able to start with two deep safeties, still defend the run very effectively. Jaguars didn't really even make an attempt to run in this game very much. They did end up running for 75 yards, but most of that was on scrambles from him.
Yeah, I definitely thought that it was interesting how much shorter time Lawrence had to throw than Jackson. But at the same time, it didn't look like he was super rushed. It looked like he was trying to do that. Yeah, It kind of came back to him. And I know my beat partner has talked about the Ravens can sometimes be exposed by quick releases because they run such a complicated defense, sometimes shifting packages and stuff like that. But I do feel like they were able to adjust because, as you said, it was interesting at the very beginning of the game. I was like, oh, they're getting run over again, just like I felt against the Rams. And then just like against the Rams, they tightened up. It's almost like they're testing them, in baseball, where you take that first strike just to see kind of what they're doing. And batters are always good the next time up. That's almost what it feels like this defense is doing. They're kind of maybe a little bit loose in the beginning, but then they've been able to tighten up. And they only had about 37 yards at maybe 8 minutes left in the game. And then the reason the Jaguars ended up with so many rushing yards, so many being relative, was because Lawrence started using his legs, which, that is an important part of the rushing game, as you know, with Lamar Jackson. However, I think it's a little bit different when that's something that he hadn't been doing very much. So it was a little bit of a surprise, but they were able to just tie up a very good running back in Etienne.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was well done, and it's not like the Jaguars didn't kind of try, as you mentioned right out of the gate. They came out with 3 6-man offensive lines. They used Blake Hance, who'd been starting at tackle, as a extra tight end on those plays, and the Ravens just ran their regular base package. They didn't try and go in any kind of jumbo formation or anything to counter it, and they were able to run the ball a couple times effectively, and then the Ravens got them for a -2, I think, by Hamilton getting into the backfield, which kind of turned it around, and then didn't really do very much the whole game. Harrison was back for the Ravens to play outside linebacker on a lot of those run downs. I think the Ravens have missed him the last couple of weeks.
I think, yes, he's not a name that jumps off the page. When I was at the Ravens Purple Evening for the ladies of their fan base, he was there and no one recognized him. And which is funny because he has a very distinct smile, goes across his whole entire face. But on the field, he just kind of does what he's supposed to. And maybe he's not making Kyle Hamilton hits, but there's something to be said for not being noticed, because I would rather not be noticed than be noticed for blowing coverage, as we saw a little bit later. So I definitely think he was missed just from his dependability, but also, of course, from the rotation, because they've had a lot of guys go in and out. And I'm sure some of the guys who've been in there every game might be feeling a little bit in week 15.
Yeah, they had an extra guy active. Jeremiah Moon was active for this game. So they had 6 outside linebackers. Moon only played special teams. He didn't play any defense in this game. So a little surprising to me that they did that. And I thought, I've been thinking for a long time they could really use an extra safety on the roster, and they have a guy, Adams, down on the practice squad who they can elevate. They just haven't done it so far.
It's definitely interesting. I was a little bit surprised by that elevation, but I also had heard the whisperings that maybe they would, because I think you might have actually mentioned this on last week's podcast, that the Ravens have done very well with activations, so they have a few to spare. So why not get another guy in there, some experience and some reps.
Well, they have some activations to spare. The other one is the IR DTR. I think was probably what I was talking about then. They have a couple of prophylactic ones they can use. So they used one of Pepe Williams that happened to pay off. They needed then a slot corner, pretty soon. And now Malik Ham is in that situation. I think he has to be activated by Tuesday, if I recall. You would know better probably. And if he isn't, then he just reverts to IR for the year, which wouldn't be the worst thing. But if they decide that they need him, then they can activate him to the 53 and have him available for these last few games. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about here? I'll give me a second here. Yeah. So there was some questionable officiating in this game. It's not the first thing I like to talk about usually, but the Ravens got a really ticky-tack DPI, but this is definitely not the game to be complaining about bad DPI calls. The one on Stevens I'm particularly referring to, but they also got what appeared to be a pretty generous call in the back of the end zone, or at least Terry McCauley couldn't stop talking about it.
I was a little surprised by that call on Stevens. I was very confused watching the replay. It was a little bit difficult because normally we watch on the field and then we watch on the TVs in the press box to just see what happened. They were just so far behind that we would miss the next play. But that was one where I chose to miss that next play because I was just so confused. Well, actually, I believe because they have to review that, I had a little bit of time, but even rewatching it, I was like, I guess he touched him. But it looks like very good coverage. And, Stevens, he's had a few DPIs this season, but he's been very tight in coverage, and through the rest of the game, he looked really solid. So it was a little bit surprising to me that he was caught on that. And it kind of reminded me of the Marlon Humphrey one out of bounds, where I was just like, okay, I don't know what else to say about it. It's just confusing, but you can't argue. So, and they definitely, as you said, had calls go their way. So eventually it evens out.
The biggest single occurrence, I guess, for Ravens fans from this game certainly is the Mitchell injury. There's certain injuries you go through in a season, and they just destroy you mentally. At least that's it for me, anyway. I don't know how you feel about these things, but boy, just off to such a great start in his career, and to have this happen right now, it looks like it'll probably spill over into 2024, if I'm guessing, on knee injuries as they typically do. Is there any new color that came out today about the nature of the injury?
Yeah, some people are saying, some NFL insiders, that it was a ACL tear, which is never good. Meanwhile, Harbaugh refused to confirm or deny that. He said it's up to Keaton Mitchell, which, I mean, we're not allowed to talk to injured players in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how he gets that news out, if he does, or maybe his agent will put something out. But Harbaugh refused to confirm or deny. He just said there was no cartilage stuff, which is good, and that it's heartbreaking, which implies that it's bad, and that he expects he'll be back every day working with the team. However, from my experience with ACL tears, that's not exactly possible. You get laid up for a little bit. But you're right, it can just ruin you because, I was impressed with Keaton Mitchell for a lot of reasons. He was injured coming into the year, which is not an easy way. Well, even going back before that, he was an undrafted rookie. So right there, that's just difficult on, a player mentally. They've got a lot to prove. It's difficult because of the perceptions of them. And he impresses in training camp. I wasn't here, but I definitely read the articles about it, have heard the talk about it. And then he gets injured, which is just not the way you want to start your football career. It gives other players a chance to get ahead of you. And then he comes back in an amazing story, as we all know. It just shows off this lightning speed, quickness, smart ideas with the ball. And he's been just a secret element for the Ravens. And what I thought was impressive was once he wasn't as secret, he still continued to produce. Because at first there was the element of like, maybe the team just didn't know how to prepare for him because there's no film on him. But he really has, only played 9 games, and he'll only go down if this is a Super Bowl season as a player who played 9 games. But I don't know that you can state his impact on this team in just those 9 games. So I'm sure he'll be working hard to get back, but there's so many more elements than just the physical when it comes to injuries. There's always the mental side of it, and it can be just so worrying to come back from such a long injury so quickly after you had another one and so early in your career. So I'm wishing him the best. He has an amazing story, and I know that his teammates are going to be playing for him moving forward.
It's certainly a very, very special rookie season here, even with the early end to it. Actually, he set the all-time record he's second in NFL history right now, because he's another one this year who's having a big year. He's second in NFL history of players in terms of yards per carry with 40-plus carries. At 8.42, 8.43. It's in that range. I just calculated this morning. Yards per carry. The only guy who's ahead of him is Devon Achane. And so he probably will not be able to maintain his 8.45 or whatever he has. He's right around 8.5. So if that's the case, Mitchell should be the highest in NFL history. It's a really remarkable start. I think that what it's shown to me is that the Ravens really want that stylistic fit at running back. They did a great job going out and making him a priority UDFA this year, because they're as unbelievable to me that he wasn't drafted. I thought he'd be, maybe a 5th round pick, 4th round pick even. He might be so unbelievable. He makes it through the draft. And we kind of saw some of the reasons why, I think, because he can't pass block at all. He's very small. He has some, a lot of problems with that, which limits his usefulness in terms of down-to-down play. But a team like the Ravens, these guys are fuel to them. Guys who can have real speed and can turn on the jets on 1st and 2nd down, even if that's all they can do. And I think there was still hope, because he was so valuable as a receiver, that he could bring something to that end of the game at well, even if it's only on for 2 downs that he's really able to play. But I think the Ravens, it will be difficult this time of year because rosters naturally get depleted and the replacement level drops as the season moves along. But I think they would be well served to try and really go out and find a speed back who complements the rest of the offense the way that Mitchell has. And it may not be this year, it may have to be next year after they find that next UDFA they like.
I know we're talking about defense today, but just quickly going off of that, I do think it's interesting that they don't have like a Christian McCaffrey type of player. Yet they're the most productive rushing attack, and they just put up over 200 yards on one of the best run defenses. And it's because they have so many different types of guys, as you were saying. Gus Edwards is completely different than Keaton Mitchell. Justice Hill is completely different. I think maybe the weakness of that is when they're in, you know exactly what you're going to get from them as a defense. But it hasn't stopped them. They've been able to, as we saw in Gus Edwards this game, maybe not last game, but this game, he was able to just get those critical short yardage, at the goal line or at 3rd and short. And so he didn't have impressive numbers, but his runs were at very critical times. And yet, that's what's coming from him when they go out like that, and the defense couldn't stop it. So I do think that's very interesting that, there's not one single star. There's a bunch of, smaller stars, and they just work together, and defenses can't prepare for everyone.
I mean, it's definitely very true. The last 6 years that the Ravens run game has really been driven by Lamar Jackson. So even teams that have been good run defense teams traditionally, like the Steelers and others, they can't seem to stop the Ravens. The Ravens run for 200 yards at will against them. I won't say at will, but they frequently had high rushing totals against good defenses because Lamar Jackson is just the ultimate force multiplier across that unit, but really helps to have those other players who do something specific that complements Jackson exceptionally well. And I think they've got that with Gus for sure. They had it with Mark Ingram. Running him out of the pistol in 2019 was terrific, and I love the speed backs and what they've done. It's just the thing that's frustrated me the last 3 years is turning to older running backs who don't have a whole lot left in the tank. And Melvin Gordon honestly exactly fits that, and I'm nonplussed by that as the backup plan for Keaton Mitchell.
Thank you and a bunch of other Ravens fans, because I obviously am in Jacksonville and had to watch Harbaugh's press conference remotely. So I was in the chat with everyone else. It automatically pops up on YouTube, and people are not happy that Melvin Gordon is the one coming in. I think people's stress levels just went up a bit.
Yeah. They got triggered. We've seen this movie before with a lot of guys, and most of them were fine. Devonta Freeman and Kenyon Drake and Latavius Murray and not Le'Veon Bell, but most of the other guys who've been older backs that have come in have run the ball just fine. They've been effective in terms of yards per carry. It's just they don't really bring the Ravens run offense at the same level that they have, and it causes a lot of collapsing around the other players that are there in terms of not being able to get the passing game going. So Mitchell was so valuable to this team. It's like the injury that this reminds me of most is Lardarius Webb getting hurt with same kind of injury at the end of his rookie year. And it was just so depressing. And so there's injuries, there's the ones, and they've been around for a long time. They're constantly frustrating. You really hope they'll get better, like Ronnie Stanley. And then there's these ones with the young players that are they're devastating to fans. All right, let's move on a little bit. We'll talk about some other things. How about the slot corner and the strong safety situation for the Ravens, which continues to change on a weekly basis here. The injury to Marcus Williams at the end of the half, by the way, one of the really great unheralded plays of this game was Marcus Williams bringing that the Jacksonville carry. Who was that? Number 11, is it Washington over there?
Wait, I would have to check, but
that's okay. He brought the guy down inbounds. Incredible play at the end of the half, and one of the really unheralded play. And then you could see on the video, it's kind of like he landed on Parker Washington. Maybe, does that sound right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Landed on the inside of his thigh, and obviously did some damage there.
Yeah, I was sitting, the press box is at the opposite corner, or I guess not the opposite corner, but the far corner right along that same end zone. So I didn't have a good view of what was going on. Obviously, all the Jaguars players and coaches were rushing a little bit, peeking in, trying to see what happened. So I had no clue that he landed in bounds. He looked out of bounds from my corner until I saw the clock just keep going. I was like, what is going on? And then I see them all just sprinting back. And honestly, I don't know if this was purposeful, but I believe it was Marlon Humphrey or potentially Hamilton. I saw 4 who kind of like got in the way, collided a little bit with one of the players. So they weren't able to reset. And then, as we all know, the clock stopped, or the clock ran out. And just such a smart play. That's one of those ones that I heard some people in the press box, maybe not from the Ravens side, grumbling that the score should have looked a lot different. And yeah, maybe it should have, but once again, they came up where they needed to. And that was a smart, intelligent, skill play to be able to make that stop. And so even if it was on the goal line and maybe if they got one more play in, they would have been able to score. But it's because Marcus Williams that they didn't. And so I think they should get credit for that and not just look at it as luck.
I mean, I think they should get credit for an inbounds tackle for certain. I have no idea what Lawrence is trying to do in that spot, throwing a ball outside of the end zone. It's way too risky to throw a ball to the 5-yard line, even right there by the sideline. At that point, I thought the spike was coming. I understand you want to get a playoff. Well, go ahead and throw it into the end zone. I didn't understand throwing it to the 5-yard line on one sideline when, the Ravens have made their living with horizontal defense this year, stopping wide receiver screens, doing whatever they need to by that sideline. And they did have the area cleared out slightly, so it actually did take a nice downhill move by Marcus Williams to get to the spot. But I still don't understand the play. I thought it was very foolish on Jacksonville's part.
The other thing was Harbaugh said they knew it was coming. So that's never a good thing to hear if you're the opposing coach. And then, of course, shout out to Roquan Smith, who wears a green dot. All the players were saying he really got everyone in the position that they needed to be for that play. So obviously Marcus Williams, great play, but also Roquan's kind of that heart that you don't always see what his effects. You don't see it in stats. You do see he has impressive stats, so you don't see the full story of what he does for this defense.
He did. I was noticing that the Ravens actually did a pretty good job of getting set for the next play had it been snapped, that would have been something they would have needed to be ready for. That they didn't even come close to really getting ready, but the Ravens were ready to play defense again, which I thought was good. But yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that about Roquan. That's a good catch. We're talking about what's happening at safety now. If Marcus Williams can't go, I guess we'd expect Geno Stone to be playing the free safety spot. My question is, Hamilton has been so effective playing at slot corner. They have Adams on the practice squad, who's a long-time free safety in the league, so they could bring him in and have him play strong or free. I assume he could do either if they want to split the field on the back end as they have. But I'm wondering, why would they really want to take Hamilton out of slot corner if they had the choice not to?
Yeah, maybe just because they know what he can bring there. I don't know. But Mike McDonald doesn't strike me as someone who stays with comfort, though. So I could see what you were saying. But it is interesting to me when you see Geno Stone. Obviously, he was leading in interceptions for a while. And he has a relatively good grade for all around, but there are certain things that he can't do. And, I think he was exposed a little bit when he tried to make that open field tackle and just completely missed the angle on Arthur Millette. Obviously not all his fault, but I don't know exactly how this secondary will stand up against, Brock Purdy and his attack. But at the same time, as I keep going back to, as ugly as it's been, you don't get where you are just by luck. So maybe they do trust him there, and maybe they're trying to stick with what's comfortable, because this isn't the first time they lost Marcus Williams. And, Kyle has looked really good as a hot corner, but he can do everything well. So maybe they look at it as, fill him in where you need most, even if he's not the best, and then bring in the best backup rather than take a risk on. Because I can't say I've noticed Andrew that practice, we don't get to see that much that would tell me anything about him. So I can't say why they aren't putting their trust in him. But the other thing is, and we know that Harbaugh can be a little, inaccurate sometimes on his injury designations, but he does say Marcus Williams is day-to-day. So, groin injuries are tricky. Going back to my, 6th grade basketball days, I remember pulling mine, and it just kind of lingers around, and you can push through it, but you can also pull it again really badly. And so I don't actually know when he'll be back. This might not even be a conversation later, but it could be down the stretch. I don't know where this is going to go, basically. So I am intrigued by your idea as well. I just don't know that we'll see someone different, because they seem to like what they've had, like how the backups have stepped up.
They had really good play from Daryl Worley on the back end when they had Marcus out early in the year. So they had Stone at free safety, Worley as the strong safety, and they had Hamilton up front, and that was very effective. And they haven't gone back to that since. Worley's been, to me, one of the really big stories of this year, and he's unnoticed. But the guy had never played safety before, or at least he was originally drafted and they thought he might be a safety, but I believe his entire NFL career has been played at corner, despite less than optimal speed for the position. But he's looked great at safety this year, I thought.
I would agree with that. I feel like the games he was in, I mean, go back to right before he got injured and he played over 100 snaps. And that's just incredibly impressive for that position. And he held strong. He didn't, kind of like we are talking about with Malik, he never showed up as a weakness. He was kind of there. He just held the fort down. And that's very impressive to do at all, but for 100 snaps. And now that you mention it, that is something I was wondering about a little whiles back, and then I just kind of got used to the fact that he wasn't in there. But you're right, he never really went back to that, and they were doing well when they had him in there filling in with the other secondary injuries. So, and same with Hamilton, just a guy with versatility like that. It just does so much for this team to know that they have options, and if something's not working, they can just change it, and they have another guy that they can rely on. Obviously, Hamilton and Worley aren't on the same level, but you need those depth guys.
Yeah. I think Marcus Williams had been playing really well considering the injury, and he's a superstar when he's totally right. I've still felt like he's played very well these last few weeks since he got off the very initial problems where he just couldn't tackle at all. He's just hurting people towards other tacklers of the sideline. Since he's been able to do a little bit of wrapping up, which is probably about 4 weeks now, he's looked pretty damn good, I thought. And you certainly done things on the back end in terms of passes deflection, in terms of being in the right places on bracket coverage and whatnot, which is discouraging the ball from being on target. A lot of that stuff has been good. And obviously a brainy play like the one he had at the end of the half was just absolutely huge. But I do feel like the Ravens have at times this year not had enough safeties active to take care of their business here. And it just seems like, in particular with Williams, a guy who's been hurt, and it didn't turn out this is the same injury. This isn't another pec shoulder area, problem again with this. This is a different injury, unfortunately, for Williams. But they've had so many problems with that group that it really was nice to have the extra guy available, and then you don't expend him. And it's surprising to me that they give up on all that Hamilton gives you close to the line of scrimmage for that.
Yeah, and I don't know what Marcus Williams looks like at full strength. I was not around for that. And so I really only know what I've seen this season. But I can tell you that when he would make tackles, when he first came back, I was wincing. It just looked like he was in so much pain. And you could feel it from all the way up on the press box, not even watching it on the screen. And you could see how much it was limiting him. And, you do have to get them back out there. You have to work that strength back up. You have to work the mental confidence, be able to make those hits as well. But at the same time, you wonder if the opposing offense knows that this guy can't wrap with his one arm, then they're going to target that. And so I was a little bit confused at first about that. But he really, as you said, has looked so much stronger. He hasn't looked like a liability. He's made some pretty big plays. And I do wonder if maybe this injury could be a blessing in disguise, because it might give that other injury a little bit more time to heal, and he can come back for the football that really matters and be better strength.
Well, let's hope the Ravens can get that number 1 seed then and get him back a little later. Darby never saw the field in this game on the outside. I thought he might, because I thought also that Humphrey might have been a reasonable opportunity to put in the slot if things had gone wrong. Obviously, they went with a fair amount of what I call the standard nickel. We'll talk about that very briefly later, but where they use a true corner in the slot as opposed to a safety in the slot. And it was surprising to me that he didn't get in the game at all. Yassin I don't even know what's going on with him being inactive 2 weeks in a row. I really thought that JAD was kind of at the bottom of the cornerback depth chart, but he's actually in there in this last night.
Yeah, when he made a tackle, everyone around was like, who is that? I mean, we all know who that is because we see him at practice. We just were so caught off guard. Because obviously we knew he was on the active roster. We just expect to see him in special teams. We did not expect to see him out there playing defensive snaps, and not just defensive snaps. So he played some big ones. He was playing third downs. Yeah, so that was surprising. And, Yassin's been at practice. He's been there. I don't know him too well. That's not one of the guys that I've talked to, so I can't say if there's maybe I don't know what his demeanor is right now, but I definitely was surprised too. We were talking about, where did this come from? Did something happen with Darby and Missy? Because this whole season they've gone to those guys. When we talk about things that they know, that's something they know. They've gone to them. So maybe going back to what you're saying before with Kyle Hamilton, maybe they'll surprise us and switch it up, because they definitely surprised us with Jalen or Davis in there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Maybe they will do that. Let's move on a little bit more. Lawrence, I want to get back to the notion of Lawrence playing small ball a little bit and talk about that. So I divide up the pass plays into three groups, as the listeners know, that there are ample time and space, ball out quick, and pressure situations. And Lawrence released the ball before pressure had any chance to develop on 20 of 44 pass plays. That's 45%. Very high percentage to do that. In a way, what you do when you throw the ball out quickly, at least from my perspective, is that you're saying, I don't want to take the chance of pressure, so I'm going to scheme something out quickly. But it reduces your chances to have both pressure situations and ample time and space situations, which are the opposite ends of the barbell, and deal with those as you would. And I think in this game, it did not play to Lawrence's favor in terms of how it worked out. Do you think this was the most extreme we've seen this season? I mean, we obviously, playing the Bengals and whatnot, they typically throw the ball to the outside, release it very quickly. Did you mentioned the time to throw? You'd seen how much difference there was. What was the time to throw for Lawrence in this game? I didn't see it yet on Next Gen.
I will look at his updated ones. Oh, it reloaded. It was at one point when I was looking, it was under 3 seconds. And Lamar's, I don't know what the final was because I had all the stats. They just refreshed in our blank right now, but it was below 3, and Lamar's was closer to 4.
Right. Lamar had the highest one. Lamar had the highest one in the league this year, I think, in this game.
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and a brand new cash-out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay hit, cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at an even bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boost, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no-strings-attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. If you found a $100 bill on the ground, you wouldn't walk past it, so don't pass up on a chance at easy cash with MyBookie. MyBookie has the biggest online selection of odds and contests to fill all your sports betting needs anytime, anywhere, so you can turn that sports knowledge into cash in your wallet. Bet the NFL, college bowl games, or play for a share of big cash prizes in weekly blackjack tournaments. And if you've been waiting for the right time to get in on the action, that time is now. Make your winning move today. Sign up at MyBookie and use the promo code RAVENS to claim your deposit match, redeemable up to $1,000. Again, that's promo code RAVENS to claim your bonus. Experience the thrill of sports betting right from the comfort of your home. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
So let me just bring it up real quickly here. Season, this is week 15. So in terms of time to throw, Lamar at 3.8 seconds. And where's Lawrence? Do you have an average one? No, 2.53. So the minor difference of 1.27 seconds per throw.
And
literally,
that's lower than when I saw it.
Yeah.
It was 2.88 when I saw it. That's
so
the one that I clearly last remember.
It was updating during the game, say, but pass by pass kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. That's great. I didn't know you could do that. So is it available to you via some special feed, or can you go to just a normal Next Gen website and get it?
Jonas has those stats, and he just gives it to me when I ask. Jonas is definitely the stat guru, so he has I'm still figuring out even where to find all the stats specifically because there's so many websites that offer so many different things. So just getting used to my go-tos and where to find everything, even within my go-tos, what pages have what. But going back to your question about whether it was the other extreme, the fact that you could just notice how quick he was trying to get it out. I think that says something because some people are counting maybe, but not everyone's counting. And to notice that 1 second difference doesn't sound like a lot of time, but you can see how quickly he was trying to get it out.
All the difference in the world in terms of having a chance for pressure to develop, certainly. And on those plays, on the 20 throws where he threw it out quickly, the Jaguars only averaged 3.8 yards per play, which is, by the way, quite low because you're already truncating the results to take out any sacks by saying when the ball was out quick. So a lot of those plays are going to end up being little short passes to the outside, some slants, and some of that. You expect to break some. Sometimes actually on deep routes, the quarterback can easily get rid of the ball in under 2.4 seconds, sometimes really like 2.2 if they want to hit a 41-yard pass outside the numbers, because that's about the old Joe Walsh number that they would need to do. But it's really surprising to me that they continued to make this choice, even though it really wasn't working out. And they were doing very well on the other throws. Even Ravens got pressure 12 times in this game, which is a horribly low rate for them in the game. But they also allowed 12 ample time and space throws, and Lawrence really burned them on those throws, including the 65-yard play.
Yeah, I've just gotten used to seeing the defensive line back there. Justin Madubuike, Dr. Away, just every game they've been in, I'm used to seeing them somewhere near the quarterback. And until the one that got called incomplete rather than a sack, right, I believe, on the goal line, almost for a safety, that was really the first time that I noticed the pass rush all really getting to him. And, it is surprising because, as once again, going back to Roquan, the bend don't break mentality, small ball, you're getting those little things, but they're really limiting how far they've gotten. They've done that all year. There've been a few explosive plays here and there throughout the year. I think DK Metcalf had that big one, but nothing that's truly hurt them, and not regularly. And so for the Jaguars to come in and, use that tactic and hope that they can get yards after the catch when, the Ravens really haven't given up that much. I will think of that one play where Kyle Van Noy just completely angled wrong and whipped on the tackle. They got some yards on that one, but I believe maybe it was Roquan who was there to back him up. But it's just not, as you said, it's very interesting decision to keep going to that. It's kind of the opposite of what we've seen the Ravens do when they're at their best, when they read the defense and they adjust accordingly. For some reason, they just didn't adjust. And you did mention the quarterbacks are not, when they're doing this, they're not taking hits. Maybe it's because Trevor Lawrence isn't at full strength yet. And
did anything more come out today about that? I did want to ask, because one thing I noticed was when he got taken down awkwardly by Oweh on the play late in the game, that he was shaking his hand, and he was more important, he's fiddling his fingers. And what I associate that with is when pitchers have a UCL tear and they have to get their arm worked on with Tommy John surgery. That's what they do when they get hurt, is they all of a sudden they twiddle their fingers and they can't really feel them. And I was wondering, there's a lot of other reasons why you might shake your hand. So I don't want to go too far down this, armchair evaluation, armchair diagnosis here. But it did seem like something was wrong, and he had nothing on those throws after that one, after the tackle in that game.
Everything that's come out has been about concussion protocol, actually. Mm-hmm. There really hasn't been anything about his hand. And the coach, I see from his press conference today, he would not confirm or deny whether, or I guess he would not say definitively if Trevor Lawrence would be back for their game against the Buccaneers. So maybe he has both injuries and they're just saying the more extreme one that's keeping him out, but that's what all the conversation is about right now. And an interesting, I don't even know if interesting is the right word because it's a little bit sad, but a stat the Ravens have is they've knocked out starting quarterback after starting quarterback. And, maybe they see that and they're like, Trevor Lawrence makes our offense run, especially Christian Kirk out. We got to just get that ball out, keep him away from taking any of those giant hits that the Ravens pass rush brings. So maybe that's an element of it that, kind of game within the game, not just scheming X's and O's, but thinking about your personnel specifically and keeping them healthy and safe.
Well, and he ends up getting hurt on a run play, which is, I guess, an all too familiar story for the Ravens. Jackson has gotten hurt in the pocket a lot too in his career, but that was I'm sure that was very upsetting to Jags fans. And I'm not sure, but I assume the coach is not allowed to say he'll be back. Maybe you would know more about this, because if he's going through concussion protocol, that's all you can say, right? Is he's in the concussion protocol. If he's cleared by then, he'll play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much. And there's a lot of elements to a concussion protocol. So also have no clue where he is, if he, passed this, but they still have another test, or if he failed his test today and still has another one, because this is really straining on my knowledge of medical knowledge, but I do believe there are a series of tests, and you have to have a series of days after when you have your last symptom. Which is funny because I just had a concussion, and I did not go through that because I'm not an athlete. I just stopped having headaches and was like, I can go back to work. So, but we have no clue where he'll be, probably until, I don't know, maybe Thursday, I would say, unless he's suddenly magically back at practice on Wednesday.
All right. The Ravens defense in this game dropped off a little bit more in terms of yards per play against the pass. They've been amazing. The 4.48 is still better than their best number ever, which occurred in 1999. Now, if you think about it, passing, it just was less a part of football. Average quarterback ratings were lower. Average gains were lower. And this is the best Ravens in terms of pass defense ever. What's come with that is this McDonald trade-off, we'll call it, of starting with too deep, being able to confuse the opponent a lot, but it does have the feature, not the bug, of giving up more runs, more yards against the run.
Yeah, and I think with the pass defense, they've been really good, as you said, and they've been top of the league. And for a while, people were saying they just haven't gone against a high-powered quarterback. Well, I think you can count Trevor Lawrence as a high-powered quarterback. Yeah, he didn't have his top receiver, but no team's ever going to be perfect. Opponent's going to be perfect. You just play what you have. And so they've consistently done that. Yeah, there have been some few big plays here and there, as you said, but I don't know. They continue to impress the doubter. There are so many doubters, especially with Brandon Stevens and Geno Stone back there. They're playing lockdown D, and everyone's like, wait until you see them against better. And a few blips here and there, but they're still holding it down. And as you said, the run, they do have to give up a little bit. I like it's a feature, not a bug, but does it matter if you give up a few runs here and there at one end of the field, as long as you're stopping once it's in the red zone? And they did. Yeah. Once again, the kicker missed the field goal, but they held them to a 50-yard and a 55-yard. They stopped them when it counted. And so they've shown that they really can do it when they need it most. And I think that fans aren't going to like it, because even me, who did not grow up a Ravens fan, I get a little heart in my throat a bit when I watch them run and you see them just succeed over and over, just pick up yards. And it doesn't feel good, but you can't deny the results.
Mm-hmm. No, it's different for me too. The Ravens went the first 20 years of their existence never allowing as much as 4.0 yards per carry. And now they're at 4.5 or wherever they are this year when you take out the kneels. And it definitely hasn't been as good. I think part of the philosophy is just it's very difficult for a team running the football to drive the ball all the way down the field without making a mistake. And we've seen Lawrence's fumble was a good example of one happening. And even when they seem to have their offense running pretty well, and then they also had good stops when they got down close as well, as you mentioned. So exciting about that.
Yeah.
Ravens won
the Rams.
The Rams too.
They ran that first drive and then for some reason stopped and then they never went back to it. So don't know if it's because the Ravens stopped giving up those looks or the Rams inexplicably ran 9 straight plays successfully against them and decided that's not a good idea. But yeah, I don't know. They're doing something. Maybe they're just too scared in the run game. But that's multiple games in a row. We've seen that little bit of time where they're giving up a bunch, and then it just stops and it goes away.
So the one thing that both Ravens safeties have some tackling difficulties. So if you can get a heavy run game or a heavy yards after catch passing games like the Browns did against them, it can be very effective. So they had, two guys, the running back, and his name is Ford, and Njoku are two guys who are certifiably very big and difficult to tackle. And getting those guys, matched up effectively against the safeties down the field after the catch or after the run, in Ford's case, was very effective against the Ravens. And I thought that was a big reason why they were able to beat them in that game. But anyway, it's something I hope we should have a better second tackling safety in the game. But Geno Stone, who's still had a lot of tackling difficulties this year, is going to be in there for every snap now. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. And maybe that's, even if I'm just thinking through the issue myself, maybe that's why they want Hamilton on the back end. You give yourself one really superior tackler back there if you have a strong safety. I don't think Worley's missed a tackle this season, though. So not to put in a plug for Worley again, but I think he'd be excellent.
I'm all for plugs for Worley. And you're right. Maybe it's more important to have Hamilton back there to act, not to use the word safety, but act as a safety valve for if they do string those plays, rather than, because you're constantly seeing him just busting up screens. And that's really nice, but it's maybe in the long run not as important for him to be up there than to be that safety valve if someone happens to slip past, North or Millette like they did, or Geno Stone. And we've seen time and again Hamilton be the one that comes and finishes the tackle that one of his teammates misses or is broken.
Did anything come out in your time in the clubhouse after the game last night about the blown coverage on the left side with Millette and possibly Stevens involved and possibly Stone involved?
Nothing that I saw. I will say I was on an offensive article last night, so I was trying to run down mostly offensive players. I didn't go through Hamilton and Roquan's transcripts from yesterday, and no one really brought it up. But that is a good question because, it looked like it was Millette's fault, but then some people were saying it looks like he had kind of pushed him off as if he was expecting someone else to pick him up. But then Geno didn't look like he was super expecting him to be back there. He kind of looked like he was playing catch up. And also, if one of Geno's weaknesses is that he's not great at open field tackling, then I don't know why that would be the plan anyway. But so I don't know where everyone was supposed to be necessarily, because no one talked about it, if that was on Millette or if that was on someone else or if it was on Stone. So that should be maybe something that we ask as we head back to the locker room on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the answer to that, by the way. And it looked like there was a pre-snap communication at the line of scrimmage between Stevens and Millette. And then Millette started to follow the wheel route correctly. And Stevens was the route that had crossed, that had rubbed off on that. He was following that route. So I think it should have been Millette, but I'm not 100% sure. And it doesn't really also answer whether or not they should have had some coverage over the top that should have been there. And maybe Stone looked at the wrong guy or bid on the wrong action or not. Anyway, I need to take another look at that play to get further as well.
And Jonas was sitting next to me going through it over and over again, trying to figure it out. And he's not positive, but I will tell you, Geno Stone is pretty good at breaking down some film. So I will have to ask him. All
right. Well, good to hear. Let's see. I want to talk very briefly about packages. And by the way, folks, Gianna's doing this and she's extremely sick. I hope you don't mind me mentioning this. It's very clear. So we're just going to have her for the first hour, and I want to get through the rest of the stuff, but I'll do the individual player reports as we go through this a little later. Did want to hit on some package information if we just move on to that. I got asked by a fan ahead of the game if we might see more race car package, which is what I termed for the Ravens 4 outside linebacker package that they've used in past years. They had 6 outside linebackers active, so maybe this was something that they would choose to get after Lawrence, who was obviously might not be in perfect shape in his legs still. Although I tell anything about his legs that was wrong from the game last night. Could you? Did you notice any hobbling?
He seemed pretty mobile. We were all like, well, one of the reporters next to I didn't know he was a runner like that because he was kind of shifty and quick. I do remember him back in his college days, running a lot. But yeah, he looked a little bit Jackson like, he looked like he was moving good.
That's what it looked to me like too. And the Ravens don't really have a way that they can put 4 outside linebackers on the field currently and still get, say, Justin Madubuike on, who they definitely would want on any pass rushing downs. But they do have a way to get 3 outside linebackers on the field, and they put their top 3 in for 5 plays. And pretty much everything that went right for the defense happened on those plays. They got 1 sack, they got their only turnover, and they got 1 other turnover on a run by Lawrence on those plays. 6 plays total went for -3 yards. So negative 0.6 yards per play for what it's worth. But all those plays had Owe, Van Noy, and Clowney on the field. And they were part of the general inability of the Jaguars in this game to convert third downs.
Yeah, it's been a storyline early in the season, and I feel like it hasn't been as much as we've moved through the season outside linebackers, because we've just kind of gotten used to Kyle Van Noy and Jason Clowney just playing lights out. But it doesn't surprise me that they would play that well when you put Clowney, Van Noy, and Owe out there, because they're a nice combination of smarts and just pure talent. Owe is a little bit younger, not as experienced, maybe isn't going through the same thing in his mind as Van Noy is, but he can, I remember back covering him at Penn State, he's just a freak of nature. James Franklin would say that all the time. And so if you can get all 3 of those guys out there at the same time, it's not surprising to me that would just stifle any offense, because you're, once again, as we said, getting to that quarterback, even if he's getting it out quickly, you're rushing him. He's playing fast. He's not taking that time. And he, as you said, he did when they were playing longer, or when he took more time to throw. But they can really affect all parts of the game when you have all 3 of those guys in that combination of experience, intelligence, and just freak athletes. And even just Clowney, he's just playing so hard right now. I would be very scared to see him coming at me if I were Trevor Lawrence.
Well, I guess so. They've been a remarkable job of providing that complementary pressure. I love the fact that one guy gets in and somebody else finishes. And as great a year as Justin Madubuike is having in terms of being a finisher, he has been a beneficiary and an absolute hoover in terms of cleaning up on other players' initial pressure. It's been just a remarkable, and this sack was no different. I mean, it was created by somebody else's pressure. I think Patrick Queen had the first pressure, right? And he missed the sack, in fact, and then Justin cleaned it up.
Yeah, I have clear images in my mind of Owe twice putting that quarterback through the spin cycle and just not able to get him to the ground, which is frustrating and won't go down as a sack. But at the same time, you can't deny how much that impacts. It slows them down and lets someone else get to them. So you're right. Madubuike has definitely been the recipient. Someone's knocking at the door.
Sure. I'll just keep going on to the next topic while we're working on that. Ravens played only a little bit of base defense, 9 snaps. And Harrison was in there for all 9 of those. They did that again, as I mentioned earlier, against the jumbo formation. That's just the base defense. They split up their nickel snaps. Other than the 5 I mentioned in this rush nickel, they had 20 big nickel snaps and 27 standard snaps. So a nice similar breakdown of using 3 safeties in their nickel and using 3 corners in their nickel. Some of that was not by design. We were forced into doing it by having Hamilton go back to strong safety instead of playing his nickel role that he was starting the game in.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that they're playing nickel so much, because if it means you have Hamilton out there complimenting everyone in that spot, I don't even know how to describe his season. There are so many words. Everyone's saying defensive player of the year, but just every single game he's contributing, and in so many different ways. So whenever you have him there, and as you say, he can play in different positions in the nickel as well, it just makes sense to me that you're going to utilize that guy as much as you can.
Now, do you guys vote at the end of the year on a defensive player of the year for the Ravens, or just vote on a team MVP?
That is a fantastic question. We did in hockey, and we also voted for a team MVP, but that is one of those things I guess I will learn as I get to the end of the season.
Fair enough. I apologize for ambushing you. That's
No, you're good.
Ravens have played just a remarkable 84% nickel on the season. That number still amazes me because past Ravens defensive coordinators, and really all of them, had a lot of variation in the number of defensive backs they wanted to put on the field. You go back to Marvin Lewis in 2000, playing 34.5% dime and quarter coverages at 6 or 7 defensive backs. And as recently as 2019, the Ravens played over 42% nickel. 42% dime the entire season. So to see them playing 6 snaps of dime the whole year, basically never being willing to take that second outside linebacker off the field, has been really strange. I mean, it's been a tremendous change from Ravens history that's occurred.
It's strange, I guess, in terms of history, but at the same time, when you think about the personnel and the way things start up front, and how successful they've been, this secondary has been injured through the season, and I'm sure they attribute so much of what they do to what's happening up front because the quarterbacks can't make as smart choices when they don't have as much time and they're under pressure, or they can't throw exactly the way they want to throw it. So, why stray from something that works when these guys are just constantly getting back there? I guess you got to keep going to them. So
yeah, not arguing with the results, Gianna. You're absolutely right. I mean, if they've been, the remarkable pass defense they've been, and it's usually on passing downs that you want to make changes like that. So you're absolutely right in that respect. That there's no reason for them to play a ton of dime. Let's move on and talk about the pass rush if we can for a little bit, and then we'll let you go. I can tell you're struggling through this. McDonald made a modest use of numbers in this game. It was primarily stunts in this game and simulated pressures. They had a lot of guys dropping from the line of scrimmage, a lot of Roquan and Patrick Queen, oftentimes both at the line of scrimmage and dropping off. Some to confuse probably the offensive line, some probably to confuse Lawrence. I think when they did blitz, they were basically doing Lawrence a favor in terms of providing him with a hot read, and he wanted to get rid of the ball quickly anyway. So it's just you're kind of doing him a solid just to show him where that hot read is by having someone run in from off ball.
Yeah, so if that is the case, it does make sense why they aren't doing as much. But I do think it's funny that maybe it's not what they did in this game, but the threat of what they could do in past games that led to this. They weren't actually getting back there. It was just astounding that they didn't get a sack until that potential safety, and then it was called back. But at the same time, they were effective. So sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No,
but
that's they certainly did a good job of it, and they didn't. When you overcommit, you show something to that quarterback, and you just give him a chance to figure it out, to decode what you're doing. And I thought the simulated pressure doesn't do that as much, and it probably still confuses the offensive line in terms of making sure everybody has the right assignment. One thing I always think is that when the defender not only, and this is more true of a lineman to do this than it would be of a linebacker, because linebackers usually drop straight to coverage and they don't touch the opposing lineman. But defensive linemen, and we saw Urban do this in this game, for example, will sometimes actually push off the guy in front of them to help themselves drop back more quickly into coverage. And when they do that, they also can greatly confuse the pass blocking, because somebody's got their hands on you. You figure they're rushing the passer, and then the lineman will kind of commit to that block, and then somebody else may be able to get the gap to either side and rush the quarterback. So it's really interesting to see, but the Ravens' use of simulated pressure in this game I thought was really good, and ended up being one of the really big plays of the game was Urban dropping to coverage. He didn't actually make the play, but he was close enough to the passing lane that Lawrence threw wide right on I think it was a third down. No, it wasn't. It was an earlier down play. It had to be because Urban was in, but he missed the throw anyway, and I thought that was a really exceptional play.
And there was a big celebration from Urban. And I believe at one point Jones dropped into the coverage too, Travis Jones, and that he also didn't end up necessarily doing anything, but it must confuse the pass blockers. Could confuse me a bit. Just it's so different seeing a guy that big dropping into coverage.
Yeah, the Ravens do it a fair amount. I want to say Michael Pierce might have dropped a coverage now 12 times this year. Now I might be thinking about Matabike, but it can happen. That's for sure. Talked a little bit about ample time, space, ball out quick, and pressure earlier. Ample time and space. Lawrence threw 12 times, 117 yards, 9.8 yards per play. That's very good. Certainly, it's almost 10 yards a throw, but there's also you look at the ones that have at least a 3-second pocket time, and that's not a tremendous number, but not a bad number. Ball out quick, 3.8 yards per play. I mentioned that earlier. And then the pressure, he was very good. 5.4 yards per play. Did have a sack. That was a turnover as well, but the 5.4 yards per play is exceptional. And the point I was making earlier is that you're what you're doing with ball out quick is not working. Okay, that's the 3.8 yards per play, and you have a chance to take the chance on ample time and space and pressure and some balance between those two if you hold the ball longer. And not only did he have these plays, which were all substantially better than when he's getting rid of the ball quickly, but he also ran the ball pretty effectively after extended pocket times created chances for him. So interesting that they did not get away from getting the ball out quickly.
I wonder if that success rate would have stayed as high if they had done it more often, just because you saw the way the Ravens defense adjusted to the run game and the way they were owning the offensive line. I wonder if they had, maybe adjustments we expected them to do, if we would be talking about a whole different thing.
Well, great point. So each team adjusts to each other as you go on the fly. And it does seem that oftentimes the offense can adjust at halftime and the defense, because they have a chance to script a few more plays, and the defense is making more aggregate level adjustments. The defense also just, I think, because the offense snaps the football and they do things, they have more chances to adjust in a way, and they really need to be better at that. But I think it's a point well taken. For the first time all year, the Ravens were shut out on the 4-man pass rush. So they had 0 sacks on 33 4-man rushes. That's been the hallmark of this defense. It's just a tremendous 4-man rush season that they've had. I want to get back to something you said earlier about Michael Pierce about Brent Urban. Because I know Brent Urban and Michael Pierce are very good friends on the team.
Yes, they are.
They hang out together on the sideline just naturally. I mean, they're on the defensive line group as well, and we keep hearing them on the sound bites and whatnot.
Yeah, and I know when I was first here and I was doing a story on the London game, they were two of the people who were actually on that London trip because they're a little bit older. And when I was talking to Michael Pierce, Brent Urban was saying he was just so excited for the food, and Michael Pierce is saying, "Oh, Herb's one of my best buddies. I let him choose the food and I go where he chooses." So I thought that was cute. And once he told me that, I've noticed ever since that they are together so much on the sidelines, walking out at practice, chatting at practice in the locker room. So definitely a very wholesome interaction between two guys that are very scary on the field and monsters. They're just like so nice and besties off.
Melissa Kim said, I don't remember who is it who has the joke, but he says the two of you are a perfect 10 together, referring to Urban, who is the 1 in this case, and Pierce, who would be more round and the 0. Have you heard that one?
I have not, but that's fantastic.
I
it
love
was
the joke.
Just amazing when they both got fumble recoveries together and they were sitting next to each other in the locker room. They were celebrating together.
They've been insufferable. I'm sure that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Matabike led the team with 5 pressure events that were in the first 3 seconds. 4 of those full quarterbacks. He's got 9 quarterback hits now the last 2 weeks. During this streak of 11 games where he's had 11 sacks as well, and at least half a sack every game. So very efficient in terms of spreading those out. He's had 29 quarterback hits during that time. Just an incredible run for Matabike. Is there anything that's like manifesting itself in terms of a superstition with Matabike or anything on the team with regard to this?
I know he was saying that his focus every game is just get one. And if he can get one, then he can get another and another. So it's not so much that he's thinking about the streak, but the streak is the manifestation of that mentality of like, just get to him once. And once you can do that, you can go again. And I also think it is, we're talking about him being the beneficiary. Some of the other guys missed sacks, but I do think that quarterback hit number does speak a lot to just how much he is doing outside of the sacks. Like maybe the sacks aren't fooling him, but he's still pressuring in other ways and affecting the game in a lot of ways.
All right, Gianna, been an absolute pleasure to have you. I can tell you're at the point where you need to get off here, but really appreciate having you on. Tell folks where they can find your work or talk to you online.
Yeah, you can find my work on thebaltimorebanner.com. Just look for Gianna Hahn. And then all of my social is Gianna, Giana _Jade, Jade.
All right. I'll say thanks for coming on. I hope we can have you on again sometime in the future. Really appreciate having you. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a Film Study short, hit me up with a DM. They're always open on Twitter, and I will get back to you very quickly. We'll talk about your idea for a show, and I like to have one of these per week maybe, and many more than that during the off season. So be sure to contact me. I promise I will get back. Gianna, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.